titled Audio Eye Webinar Series.
Alrighty, everyone. Welcome to Audio Eyes Live webinar. Today's webinar topic is where the world's leading brands fall short on digital accessibility, key findings from Audio Eyes Digital Accessibility Index, and do I have got quite the webinar for you. We are going to be joined today by Mikel Audio Eye's Chief Revenue Officer, and members of the Audio Eye Alliance community, Ren Higginbottom, TJ Olsen, and Christina Campbell. I am your host, Mariela Paulino. I am the Advocacy and Social Media Manager for Audio Eye. My audio description: I am a Hispanic woman with long black hair parted to the side, and I am wearing a black shirt. And I am currently in my home office, but you will not see all of that clutter in the background. Instead, you will see a virtual background where we have the orange gradient along with the Audio Eye logo to the side. My pronouns are she and hers, and I am also a woman with a hearing disability. Very, very excited to have all of you today. Let's go to the next slide. So first, we're going to be going over accessibility accommodations. After that, we're going to have a welcome from the Audio Eye leadership, followed by the Digital Accessibility Index results with our Chief Revenue Officer, Mikel Chertuti. After that, you have the chance to ask Mikel some questions. Following that, we will have a panel conversation with members of the Alliance community. And then after that, you'll get the opportunity to ask members of the Alliance community some questions. We're going to have Damian Carrillo, our Vice President of Services Operation, come up on the stage. Damian, are you ready?
I sure am. Thank you, Mariela. And a big thanks to everyone joining us today. My name is Damian Carrillo, and I'm Vice President of Service Operations here at Audio Eye. My pronouns are he, him, and his. I'm a middle-aged Hispanic male wearing a dark gray t-shirt with a small white Audio Eye logo on the left chest. I'm wearing a backwards all-white baseball hat, and I have an orange gradient virtual background with a purple Audio Eye logo in the upper right corner. I'm currently in my home office in Arizona. I'm really excited to be here today. Not only is October National Disability Employment Awareness Month, but last month we released the Digital Accessibility Index. This index combines AI-driven detection and automation with expert audits that are completed by members of the disability community. This approach allowed us to identify the most common accessibility and usability issues in over 40,000 websites. Mikel will be talking more about our findings in a moment, but at their core, they highlight the unacceptable reality that regardless of the device being used, whether a phone, tablet, or laptop, digital experiences are often broken for many people, especially those with disabilities. This can impact their ability to do everyday tasks we often take for granted, like online shopping, banking, or simply trying to access information. This is why I'm so passionate about the work we do every day at Audio Eye. Unfortunately, many businesses, regardless of their size or industry, often lack the internal expertise to understand the nuances and complexities of digital accessibility, which ultimately prevents them from taking meaningful action. This is Audio Eye's why. We are here to help guide and support you every step of the way in your accessibility journey, and we are thrilled to work alongside and partner with such an amazing community in doing so. I can't thank you all enough for taking the time to be here with us today. Let's continue working together to break down all barriers to digital access. Thank you, and now I'll turn it over to you, Mikel.
Damian, thank you. We are so excited to be sharing the results with you today. My name is Mikel Chertuti. I'm a middle-aged Caucasian male with blonde hair and blue eyes. I'm wearing a blue button-down shirt. My preferred pronouns are he and him. Here at Audio Eye, I'm responsible for taking care of our current and future customers as the Chief Customer and Revenue Officer, and I'm located in my home office just south of Salt Lake City, Utah. So we're going to talk just a little bit about our agenda today, and we're very excited to shine a spotlight on the state of digital accessibility, including the gaps and opportunities. And so we're going to be covering a few things. First, the need for a digital accessibility index. Why did we do this? Secondly, we're going to be talking about the methodology. We're going to then be talking about the index average and what we found across the entire web. And then what we're going to do is we're going to talk about 2 deep dives in some key insights and sharing what we learned from the automation portion of our digital accessibility index. And then we're going to be sharing industry-specific insights from the manual expert audit component of our digital accessibility index. All right, so we all may have heard the stats that only 3% of the world's websites are accessible. And we have this represented on this slide as 100 screens and only 3 highlighted in a purple color. That number, unfortunately, has not changed much in the past few years, but we didn't have insight into how inaccessible these sites are. So we launched the Digital Accessibility Index to understand and shine a light on how significant of an issue this is. We built the index with the intention of being more quantitative and qualitative and put metrics behind the accessibility of the digital world. We were shocked at what we found. So from a methodology perspective, we took 2 approaches to understanding the accessibility of a website. From an automated perspective, we scanned 40,000 of the largest websites. For each website, we scanned 100 pages looking for violations or compliance according to the WCAG 2.2 criteria. In the process of this scan, we scanned over 2 million pages, 3 billion elements like links, images, forms, and others, and we uncovered 74 million accessibility issues and errors. Because automation can't uncover every accessibility issue, we also employed testers from the disability community to audit the top 3 to 5 websites across retail, financial services, travel, media, insurance, and even government. These audits focused on key site objectives and user paths, meaning we looked at the purchase path for retail, the booking path for travel, among others. Our auditors reviewed 21 of the world's largest brands, spanning 102 pages, and found 274 significant accessibility barriers. Combined, the data we pulled from automation and manual testing showed us that the accessibility issues are not only prevalent, but are also significant. So as we think about these insights, the more it was impressed upon us how visiting a website is similar to going on a journey. Each web visitor has an objective, something they want to accomplish, like making a purchase, signing up for an account, or even contacting customer service. This web journey is not much different than someone jumping in a car and looking to get from point A to point B. And just as we have a physical destination on a trip, we each have a digital destination when we visit a website. And for people with disabilities, this digital journey can have its challenges that slow them down, hinder their progress, or stop them completely in their tracks. Digital accessibility issues are the potholes, the detours, and the road closures of the digital world that keep people with disabilities from accomplishing the tasks that they each set out to do. We leaned into this analogy and shared automated results and expert audit findings in a way that made clear to enterprise organizations, buyers, and others that there are clear roadblocks to digital accessibility. Let's look at a few data points in the next slide. We started out by trying to understand the index average. That is, how many errors, accessibility issues did we find on the average page that we scanned? Ideally, this number should be as close to 0 as possible, as it is a relative gauge of the accessibility of a page. Unfortunately, we found that the average web page has 37 accessibility issues and errors that we could find through automation. Because we can only use technology to scan a portion of the WCAG criteria, the reality is that each page likely has many more issues that would be picked up during the manual audit process that we will uncover here shortly. Interestingly, and looking at the types of errors we found consistently across these pages, we identified 3 key insights that businesses should keep in mind as they build pages and digital experiences that we will highlight. Let's talk about the first one. Our first insight from our automated scan is related to images. We found that 4 out of 7 images on a page, or 56% of all images, had faulty or missing alt text. This means that for each visitor who uses a screen reader to access content, the technology is not able to clearly describe to them the imagery. We have an image of stop signs on this slide, or signs that indicate the speed. One with no text on it, one that simply says don't speed, and one that says speed limit 25. These examples show us how inadequate or missing alt text can make it difficult to navigate a site, especially as websites are so image heavy. Imagine riding down the road in your car and you see a blank sign, or you see a sign that says simply don't speed, or you see a sign that's more helpful, speed limit 25 miles per hour. This is the similar experiences that we portray on our sites for those with disabilities. We need to be more descriptive with these images in the alt text. If our websites don't have detailed and specific alt text, we are likely creating inaccessible and poor user experiences for people with disabilities. Let's go on to the next insight. Our second is related to links. We found approximately 5 links on every single web page that were inaccessible. When the link description is vague, it makes visually or cognitively impaired users go through the motions of clicking through links just to find where to go, wasting their valuable time and adding to frustration. As we think about reaching our digital destination, links are like GPS directions, helping us get to where we need to go. A direction to turn isn't super helpful, whereas a specific direction, such as turn left in 500 feet on Main Street, tells us everything we need to know. Each link on a site should have specific directions so that an assistive technology can understand where the links go and what pages the users will be taken to. Let's look at our next insight. Our third insight is related to form fields. These are the types of fields that are critical to so many important actions on a website, like signing up for a newsletter, going through a shopping cart experience, or signing up for an account. Our scan of 40,000 sites found that 1 in 4 forms have missing descriptions and clear labels or instructions. When many of these form fields are often required to continue in a process, this can be a significant roadblock and barrier that keeps someone from reaching their digital destination. An inaccessible form field may simply tell the user, input info here, which doesn't give insight into what is needed, whereas an accessible form would ask for a specific required piece of information, such as an email address or a credit card, or something else that's relevant to reaching that digital destination. Next, we're going to discuss the industry insights. After reviewing our automated scan results of 40,000 websites, we also had our team of expert testers from the disabled community perform audits of the top 3 to 5 retail, financial services, media, insurance, travel, and government websites. In these exhaustive audits, the testers looked at specific actions a user would take in a retail shopping experience or booking travel. In total, they reviewed over 100 pages across 21 sites and found 274 significant barriers. So we're going to talk a bit about each of these areas. In the Digital Accessibility Index, we go into detail for each of 6 industries. We're going to start with retail. The common barrier our testers found included issues adding items to a cart and submitting key form fields in the checkout process. In financial services, navigating promotional pop-up windows and accessing account policies were sometimes impossible to navigate. For travel sites, our testers found that they were unable to use data pickers or hotel room selectors with pop-ups and dates, which is a key function of researching and booking travel. In media, when perusing photos, the descriptions were so vague that users had very little idea of what separated one hotel for another. And in media sites, our testers found themselves getting stuck in articles, unable to keyboard tab to the next article. Or as is common in multimedia sites, they found getting stuck in multimedia slideshow content stopped them in their tracks. On insurance sites, our testers could not look up interactive coverage maps or search for agents in their areas, again, a core function of an insurance website. And finally, our testers found on government sites the inability to submit official documents or being able to log in to government accounts. These represent core barriers in each of these very specific industries. As we endeavor to include more industries in our future versions of our Digital Accessibility Index, we will cover additional verticals as well. And we are confident that while progress is being made, there will be core barriers in each of these key verticals. Once again, we thank you for your time today and interest in understanding how accessible the world's leading websites are. If you'd like to understand how accessible your website is or your digital experience, whether that's a mobile app, a web app, or your website, you can contact AudioEye, or you can use our free scanner or request a complimentary manual audit of your site pages or digital experience from our Digital Accessibility Index on our homepage or our website. And we can help you engage with members of our disability community as they have completed this very important work in manually auditing and doing expert tests across these key vertical websites as well. We will now open it up to any questions that you may have. Also, I'm very excited to shortly after introduce some members from our disability community, TJ, Ran, and Christina, as we do this. But let's first start with some questions, if there are any.
Thank you so much for such an incredible presentation. Michael, I feel like over the last few months, I have learned so much on just how we are able to really invest into the community and learn from the community. I'm going to start you off with a question. So, experts from the disability community were involved in the audits. Can you explain why it's crucial to have these experts participate in assessing digital accessibility? And can you tell us a little bit about who they are?
Yes, of course. Thank you. One of the reasons why involving members from the disability community into a study like this is because automation can only go so far. As we talked about, when we think about the WCAG criteria, in 2.2, there are over 80 specific criterion points, and automation can only pick up a subset of those when we scan a website. And so it's critical that we involve members from the disability community and expert testers to help us identify the other issues that automation and scanning cannot pick up. And that can only be achieved by a manual audit. And so that's why we involved members like TJ, Ren, and Christina into our audits, because only they have the ability to understand the barriers and the roadblocks in traversing this digital experience. And as we used in our metaphor, it is a journey. And if they are not able to achieve their destination across a digital experience, they are key and central to helping us uncover the roadblocks and the barriers. And only they could help us to uncover some of those key areas that we highlighted just on the 2 prior screens, where we talked about retail barriers, financial services barriers, travel barriers, media barriers, insurance and government barriers. Scanning alone cannot do that. And so to create a complete offering, to create a complete index, we absolutely had to involve them in this important research and study.
Thank you so much for that. We are getting a few questions on the Zoom Q&A. I'm actually going to start with the very first one. This is from Ryan Holiday. Are there any resources you recommend for testing accessibility issues in non-web environments like mobile apps? Ooh, it's a harder one.
Yeah, Ryan, that's a great question. So resources that we recommend for testing accessibilities in non-web environments like mobile apps, there is tooling that is getting better to help identify issues like this. The problem is whether it's a scanner or tooling that you might deploy in a development or an SDK environment like this, they're not going to be able to pick up on all the criteria. So there are over 80 criterion points in the WCAG 2.2 single A, double A, and triple A criterion points for WCAG. And it's just impossible to be able to identify all those issues with just tooling and scanning alone. So the most robust way in which you can do that is to ensure that you involve people who are expert testers, just like we have done in this survey, involving experts from the accessibility community. And so that's part of the offering that AudioEye has, that when we go out and work with our customers, we do lots of mobile app audits. And we engage primarily our expert testers to conduct that important evaluation. So that's probably the gold standard, is involving experts to help with that. It's a great question, Ryan.
I love that because you'll be surprised, especially in the last few years. We do everything from our phones. We go online, we go shopping, we go to concerts, we learn. So I'm very, very happy that we're doing this at AudioEye. I do have a really great question here from Aline Yi. Hi, I'm a user interface designer and work with an array of clients. A few clients fear lawsuits. Can you speak about this? Also, there are some individuals who are trying to extort companies, threatening companies with lawsuits, saying that their companies aren't accessible. So, a two-part question. Go for it, Michael.
Yeah, Ellen, this is a really important question. And you, as an interface designer working with your clients, yes, it's true. There are many clients out there, many customers that you probably have that fear lawsuits because there are lawsuits specifically aligned to some acts like the American Disabilities Act that was passed in 1990. There's Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act. Organizations and people can bring forth lawsuit claims using the language in these acts. And so on one part, we're very behind these acts because it does help to ensure that the regulation is out there to protect the rights of people with disabilities. On the other hand, are there people out there that are taking advantage of this in a nefarious way? And the answer is, you're probably sitting somewhere in between, where people can bring forth suits. The most important thing to do is to ensure that your website and your digital experiences are truly accessible. And when we think about the WCAG criteria, every single WCAG criteria point doesn't necessarily mean it's a barrier, but some of them do. They do create the gold standard ensuring accessibility. So here at AudioEye, we focus on those WCAG criteria, and because that does help to create the gold standard of accessibility, a subset of that criteria does pose those barriers, and that's where the lawsuits can be brought forth. And so it's really important to do these comprehensive audits and to use a combination of automation and expert auditors to ensure that websites are truly compliant and that no lawsuits, whether frivolous or those that have basis for lawsuits, can be brought against customers and your clients in this case.
We have a few more minutes left. I'd love to address this next question from Angel Webb. Public high school, my son has CVI, which is cerebral visual impairment. And with low vision, he struggles to complete assignments without access. We thought schools are required to have accessible sites. Is that true?
So this is a very important question. Just like any organization, whether it's profit or nonprofit, they are under the same guidelines from the American Disabilities Act. And if there are federal components to that, they also do fall under Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act as well. They should be accessible. Their digital experiences should be accessible. And so, yes, they are under that mandate to provide accessible experiences for their students. The answer is absolutely yes.
Alrighty, we've got time for one more question. Concerning websites for professional organizations such as the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, do you anticipate that your digital accessibility index would indicate significant barriers as it did for the 6 types of websites you scanned or audited?
Yeah, Susie, it's a great question. Very shortly, we are going to be including other areas, other verticals, in addition to media and travel and hospitality and retail and others. We would imagine that we will find similar findings across professional organizations, nonprofit organizations, and other verticals. And interestingly, we did find that, again, that common index of 37 issues per website will probably be, unfortunately, the standard out there in terms of the accessibility barriers and issues that we found. So I would imagine it may be similar. And they're the same common pitfalls that we talked about today. Things like images without alt text, links without proper descriptions, form fields without the requisite descriptions for those form fields, pop-ups where people get lost in those. So we would imagine that they're going to be very similar. So Susie, if you're interested in helping us to help you evaluate the accessibility of those organizations that you may be a part of, we'd be happy to help you uncover that. But we'll add that to the list of professional organizations to our next version of our digital index here in the coming months.
Michael, final question for you. You mentioned that for insurance companies, forms and those kind of elements were the main accessibility problem. How does AudioEye fix those issues?
When we think about forms, so there are two ways to really, actually, I'm going to talk about three ways to address fixing and addressing accessibility issues overall. The first is what we would talk about as preventative. That is making sure that your designers, your developers, your web content management professionals are educated. And that is a great way to prevent accessibility issues, including form fields without the proper descriptions. The second would be preemptive and being proactive. So as you are having your developers or your UX designers, we have tooling that enables them prior to publishing a code or a digital experience to go and run checks and assess and understand where there may be issues for this. The third is what we call remediated, where you're being reactive. You've already published something on a website, you've already published something in a mobile app or a web app, and you have to address it, and you have to remediate it and fix it. And so in that way, there are three ways in which it can be addressed. The best way is always to fix the issue at source. And so if there's a lacking description, that's where our audit will uncover, using members from the disability community, find those missing form field descriptions. And we will point that out to you in a report and help you address that page by page, form by form, where you can fix that issue. Another way is that AudioEye provides a very unique way to address remediations, where we can deploy custom remediations for you using some technology, but it has to be done very carefully in order to do that. And we have to check and ensure that it is done well and done correctly, because ultimately, ensuring that the accessible experience for form fields and others is done correctly is critical. And so we have to evaluate it carefully. Sometimes we can deploy a remediation on your behalf in a custom way. And other times it just requires it to be addressed at source, which is always the best way.
Michael, that was incredibly insightful. Absolutely love learning from you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. Do you have any closing thoughts you'd like to share with our community before we switch the stage over to the community members?
I am just very excited for the research that went into this to help, again, shine a spotlight on the depth of the issues and the gaps, and also the opportunities for us to ensure that we are building and creating a digitally accessible world for everyone. And so that's critical. Lastly, I would like to thank, and we're going to be talking about them right now, TJ, Ren, and Christina, members of AudioEye's disability community, and their observations on this important research and how they helped us in this research itself. So very excited to hear from them.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Michael. So let's go ahead and bring our Alliance community members to the stage. Hello, everyone. Christina, Ren, and TJ, thank you for joining us today. So I would love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself, audio description, preferred gender pronoun, and anything else you feel comfortable. Ren, I would love to start with you.
Hello, everyone. I am Ren. I am a non-binary person who is in their mid-20s. I am wearing my Audio Eye shirt, a sunflower clockwork necklace, and very large headphones. I am in my dining room and I live in Rhode Island. I am blind and I have ADHD.
Let's pass it on to Christina. Christina, can you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. My name is Christina Campbell, and I am a accessibility tester here at Audio Eye. My preferred pronouns are she, her. I am legally blind, and today I am coming to you from my living room / home office / studio here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I am Hispanic with long, very dark brown hair in a ponytail, and I have a blue shirt on. And it's great to be here today.
DJ, go for it.
Good afternoon, all. My name is TJ. I am also an accessibility tester here. I'm coming to you from New York City in my home office living room. I am in my mid-30s. Oh, I'm totally blind as well. I am Caucasian male in my mid-30s with short brown hair and wearing a gray shirt. Looking forward to speaking with you all.
Fabulous. Let's go into our questions for today's panel. The first question we have is, can you share any positive experiences or examples of websites or brands that have truly embraced digital accessibility and made a noticeable difference in your online experience? TJ, I know you're a small business owner in New York. I'd love to start with you.
Great. So as Mariella just mentioned, I am myself a small business owner. Aside from my direct accessibility work, I'm involved in the live music and nightlife space, which have historically been industries, especially the nightlife side, that have been kind of slow to adapt and adopt technical solutions to many of the challenges that we face. But it's been really rewarding to work with some of the companies in this space as they really take accessibility seriously and build out their tools, and even like newer companies to the space as well. Specifically, Toast comes to mind, as well as Venue Pilot and Neon and several other like small upcoming companies in that space who are making sure that the products they make available to professionals, to performers, to artists, and to consumers, guests, attendees, etc., are all accessible from the ground up.
I love that. Building with accessibility in mind is absolutely critical. So, Christina, can you share any positive experiences or examples of websites or brands that have truly embraced digital accessibility and made a noticeable difference in your online experience? I know you have a lot to say on this, so go for it.
Sure. So a few years ago, I started a journey to get my certificate of naturalization, which involved me going to government website and applying to have that sent to me. It was a very long process. And at the beginning, I will say it was not very accessible. It required me actually having to get sighted assistants to fill out a lot of the information on the page and to sign up and register and all that kind of stuff. We talked about form fields. That is definitely a space where the form fields were not accessible. As I traveled through this journey, through the months and years, the process actually became much easier. And I was able to actually sit back and watch the accessibility of this site grow through the years. And it was actually really cool, especially once starting here at Audio Eye, to be able to kind of see those parameters shift and change through the years. The last time I was on the site about 6 months ago, the site was I would say like 90% accessible. I was able to complete everything I needed to do without any sighted assistance at all, which was really awesome and really liberating and a very cool thing to watch the process through those years grow.
I absolutely love that, Christina. Just being able to do things independently is kind of like being able to go to the doctors or having access to your healthcare information without needing to have support is such a powerful, and I loved the word you use, liberating. So I am absolutely here for it, and I am very, very excited to see companies continue to invest into accessibility. Alrighty, let's go into our second question. Looking ahead, what are your thoughts on the role of AI and automation in potentially reducing digital accessibility barriers? And what challenges should we be aware of as these technologies continue to advance? Christina, I'd love to start with you on this question.
Sure. So I am a really big fan of like AI space right now. It is growing and expanding so quickly. And I think it's going to be a really great thing here coming up in the next months and year. When I'm not doing things with audio, I also assist in teaching a course in data analysis and visualization. So basically, charts, graphs, and all the things that usually are not very accessible as far as being a blind person or a person who is blind. So for fun, I took one of these charts that I knew exactly what it was and stuck it into one of these AI programs. It was able to give me a very good description of what that chart was. What was very interesting to me was it did not, quote unquote, lead the witness. It did not necessarily say what it thought the chart was about. It gave a very great description of what the chart was. And with the particular software I used, I could ask it deeper, more advanced questions as if I needed more information. So it was actually very cool, and my jaw hit the floor honestly when I first did it. It was like the most amazing thing because that has really been a huge barrier, I think, in accessibility is these charts and graphs and data imagery. So that was really cool. Some concerns I might have here in the future, the way AI can be very broad, not really getting to the information that we all need. We're going to talk on that just a little bit more when you speak to some other, to TJ and them. So it is definitely an area that I think will grow. And hopefully if we institute the right checks and balances, it will be very, very, very helpful to us in the future.
DJ, I know you've got something to say.
Sure, absolutely. So I think I'm going to take more of a broad, like 20,000 feet approach to this answer and kind of delve in that way. I have been using digital technology and the web long enough to remember a time where the easiest way to get the text off a web page was literally to copy and paste into Notepad when WCAG was kind of maybe a thought, but I certainly wasn't aware of it, and it wasn't really in use or in any meaningful way. And I've seen, massive changes in what the access we have. But the most interesting part is how much I think the public and individuals have learned about disability and the needs of disabled folks through implementation of accessibility and the integration of us into the digital space. So one of my concerns is that with the implementation of AI-centered solutions to ensuring access, we risk in some ways going backwards as far as our integration, as far as access becoming something that could be applied later versus something that's implemented in the immediate stages of designing and building out products, but also losing the nuance of what accessibility means for groups and subsets of those groups, which is where human aided or user aided or whatever you want to call it, audits for apps and websites are so essential, like we do here at Audio Eye, in that we do make notes of exactly how this stuff works in the real world, which with just automated solutions or just add-on solutions, you don't get that data. You don't have that knowledge. Something could be totally compliant and still be totally either useless or really challenging for various sets of users with different needs and experiences. Making sure that we don't over rely on AI solutions is super important. And I think it applies beyond the web as well, as AI enters our real world spaces, not just having that be the only way that disabled users are expected to interact with the worlds around them.
AI is a very big thing for me. I'm actually also a psychology student, so a lot of what I'm working through right now is how AI and humans can work together more effectively. And as an accessibility tester, I like to put that in terms of how can AI help accessibility? And for me, a lot of what AI can do is simplify. I do have ADHD, so for me, going through school is a lot of trying to force myself to focus and trying to force myself past the paralyzation that comes with ADHD and figuring out where to start. So I can see AI helping a lot of people who are interested in accessibility, but don't necessarily know how to put it in, know how to start, or understand exactly what they need to do. It can help simplify their experience and help explain for them in ways that they'll understand how accessibility can be implemented and why it's so important. One thing I can see as a challenge of that, though, is the potential for it to become an accessibility one size fits all solution. If we are designing one single system that is supposed to work everywhere for every single person, you're going to end up leaving a lot of people out. I am blind, so a lot of people assume I need audio description to watch TV and movies, and that is very incorrect. I was born totally blind, and I've developed just my understanding from listening to things, listening to shows, listening to movies, picking up on all of these little details that other people would normally miss. So when I have audio description on, I often stop paying attention to the show because it's too much sound for me. I just cannot pay attention to that many things at once. Yeah, that's a very big thing I can see happening and that we have to be careful with is making sure that we don't fall into a one size fits all solution.
Stacy, I absolutely love it. What I would like to do now is I would like to open up the Q&A for our attendees. I do have one quick question. For those in our audience who may not be familiar with the Audio Eye Alliance community, could you explain what it is and how it supports the cause for digital accessibility for those who are blind or have vision disabilities? Christina, I'd love to start with you on that question.
Awesome. So yes, we are the Audio Alliance community is a group of testers, a group of individuals who have varying disabilities, whether vision impaired or completely blind, and other varying disabilities, who use assistive technology to audit these websites and go through them. I like to tell people with a fine-tooth comb and find these barriers and these glitches or bugs in these websites that make these sites not accessible to us, and we work together to forward accessibility, and we do a bunch of other stuff, and it's been a really great experience and I love what I do.
DJ?
So as far as the Accessibility Alliance, I like to think of it as two separate things. We audit and we advocate. The audit is kind of exactly what Christina just said, where we go through a site, making sure that everything technically works, making sure that the individual components of a page are usable with screen reading solutions in various combinations of browsers, screen readers, access technologies, etc., but also ensuring that beyond just working, does it make sense? Is it usable? Does it meet the kind of, growing expectation of how these elements work in harmony with each other to create a usable experience, not just an accessible experience?
We do have time for one final question. This is from Shan O'Brien. If you could answer it as concisely as you can, that would be lovely. The question is, I am a web developer trying to make our company's products as accessible as possible. We conduct regular accessibility audits and use the NVDA and JAWS screen readers during our development and testing. What other tools and assistive technologies can we use to understand the diverse perspectives of our users? Ren, if we could start with you answering that question, then pass it off to Christina and wrap up with TJ, and concise is key here. Go for it.
Well, one thing that instantly comes to mind is you are testing with NVDA and JAWS. However, what about mobile users or Mac users? Having that spread of operating systems and devices is also a very important thing. What do you think, Christina?
As a Mac user, that was the very first thing that jumped out at me. Absolutely. So VoiceOver, which is the equivalent in a Mac, and yes, mobile devices as well. Absolutely.
I'm gonna obviously third VoiceOver and TalkBack is for Android as well. VoiceOver for Mac, but one of the things I'd like to quickly flag is in conversations I've had with even people who are professionals in this field, is making sure you kind of get an understanding of how visually impaired and blind users use their screen access technology. I recently had a conversation with someone who was under the misconception that the primary way a blind user uses a browser website is through tabbing through the page contents, which in fact was true, but a very long time ago. So making sure you understand how they use arrows, how they use elements, and all those things to act, and how they're actually implemented in the real world navigation experience is so crucial.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about. That was a phenomenal set of answers. Christina, Ren, TJ, thank you so much for your time today. What we're going to do now is we are going to wrap up. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your knowledge, expertise, experiences with us. Finally, I would like to personally thank our speakers today. Damien, thank you so much for your time. That was such an amazing introduction to Audio Eye. Michael, whoa, GAI Insight. How were you able to do that in 15 minutes? Whoa. And then finally, of course, major thanks to TJ, Ren, and Christina for taking time out of their schedules today to talk with us about the Alliance community and user testing. With that said, thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, and we will see you next time. I'm your host, Mariela Paulino, and make sure that you stay connected to Audio Eye by following us. A lot of our content goes out primarily on LinkedIn. So go to LinkedIn and then /company/Audio Eye-INC. I look forward to connecting with all of you there from the Audio Eye account. It is exactly 3 o'clock. We are exactly at time. I will see you next time. Goodbye, everyone.